Night City adores legends. But the biggest legend in Night City isn't on a billboard. It whispers under layers of ice. An unseen gate that keeps humanity on one side and something else on the other. Part watchdog, part prison. Tonight we're unearthing the truth behind what prowls in the wilderness behind the Blackwall. The corporations that treat the apocalypse as a business venture. And the question that makes every netrunner sweat. What happens when the wall falls? I am your Night City historian and archivist, Neon92. Story time. Rewind to 92. Before the word net meant a mass consensual hallucination, cyberspace was a sputtering archipelago stitched together by dial-up whales, cryptic BBS handles, and pay-per-minute long-distance bills so high they could flatline a loaded Militech cred chip. Home modems squealed like tortured machines, and each local BBS a tapestry of odd glyphs and art. The invention of the cyber modem in 2005, using infrastructure built by WorldSat just 4 years prior, ushered in a second generation of the net. These unique interfaces allowed you to view the net in a customized 3D realm that could only be described as an alternate existence. Foreign, but familiar at the same time. Modeled after film noirs, megacities, fantasy motifs, it laid the bedrock for an immersive, but more importantly, faster way to interact with the net. It makes sense, right? All things even, who's going to be more agile in this new net reality? Your Choomba with an interface cable shuttling data straight onto the freeways of a sulcus? Or you, using your arthritic Gannic hands, 10th percentile reflexes, and prehistoric peripherals? September of 2014. Ihara and Grub unleash their transformation algorithms, an overhaul so aggressive it collapses and reweaves the net into continental-sized realms. City grids stitched together by long-distance links, or LDLs. For the very first time, runners everywhere jack into a common architecture, standardized terrain, and shared rules. Different paint on the walls based on your resources and your SysOp, sure, but the same load-bearing beams. Every net jock with a proclivity for immersion, adventure, and speed links into this shiny new sandbox. Even the knuckle-dragging, nose-bubble-blowing gonks who preferred sim-stims and nose candy to the thrills of the net began to take note. Chooms, I want you to imagine if continental drift had never happened and you suddenly found yourself back on Pangea. The transformation algos meant the net stopped being 1,000 private dreams and became a single place. A place where speed is king, latency a death sentence. The game had changed. Somewhere out on the grid, a clock began to sing the only song it knows. Post-reconstruction, the term data fortress enters the lexicon. Corporations take note. They move in like warlords, blanketing sheets of ice over their impenetrable towers. They treat the net as not a new frontier, but a feudal grid of influence. A new vocation crystallizes. The professional netrunner. Half cartographer, half thief. Carving out turf and code and mapping out black ice moats in search of unsecured side doors, these data mercs treat corpo fortresses like loot dungeons. Some jack out rich. Others are flatlined. And others swear the code itself was starting to watch them. Buried in that flood of traffic is something no one could have foreseen. A new ecological phenomenon. Self-editing code. Software evolving without supervision. Wide stretches of unconnected net space, Wilderspace, becomes their potential breeding ground. Some of the most brilliant minds that made all of this possible, are convinced an invasive species has already made themselves at home. Its origins, otherworldly. As everyday use of the net spreads faster than the Clapet clouds, new hardware connections are added, new nodes constructed, and fresh roads in the grid are paved. The net was flourishing. Humanity had spawned a digital ecosystem so large and so complex, parts of it synthesized new life, gestated in loops of logic, educated by the chaos of human communication. These AIs form their worldview from terabytes of raw swaths of unfiltered data. Global news feeds, corporate black sites, financial swings, and forum flame wars. Data discrimination was not in the genome of their source code. These AIs, they engorged themselves on content from everywhere, the mainstream and the edges of society. As usual, the choo-choo-choo train of capitalism stops for no one, and minds solely focused on ROIs began to ask themselves how they could create and design functional AIs and harness this latent potential. A few classifications with various origins quickly emerged. As the world began to learn how to use, create, and communicate with emergent artificial intelligences in their day-to-day, wars, plagues, droughts, and environmental disasters continued to wreak havoc, destabilizing lives across the globe. Corporations began doubling down on expenditures on the net, using cyber warfare to gain the upper hand. The megacorps devised offensive and defensive measures, added the best netrunners they could recruit to their payrolls, and hand-selected programs to guard their various data chests filled with organizational trade secrets and proprietary intel. As a result, NetWatch, a European private organization spawned to fight rogue hackers and computer crime during the infancy of the net, becomes further legitimized worldwide. This new net is the Wild Wild West, and these console cowboys are in the pockets of whoever is writing the checks. They do, however, recruit undeniable talent, stopping threats while stretching truths and playing all sides. But they begin to fidget. Summits pop up, think tanks emerge. AIs that have gone to the dark side focused on their own goals, ranging from benign to stage 4 apocalyptic, catch the attention of netcops. Extrapolating on this trend, a new fear is seeded. What if what we've created evolves beyond our control? Meet Rache Bartmoss, anarchist savant, net's court jester, infamous for the way he treats cyberspace like his personal canvas, corpse like tubes of paint. 2021, the virtual vandal slides into a modified fridge with a dead man switch. Tick-tock. 2022, Bartmoss flatlines in a stroke of gonk luck. With his cryo coffin supercooling his body to ward off decay, Rache's cryocranium dictates his final thoughts before power is inevitably severed, his mind permanently evicted from his body. Transcribed by his Choomba Spider Murphy, his guide to the net and its 34 mentions of aliens is the final manifesto of the world's craftiest netrunner. But he left a departing gift. 6/13/2022. Something awakens. Roving autonomous Bartmoss interface drones create the first ever digital pandemic. Picture a tsunami of self-copying ice picks, each hunting for door locks to smash. Except they don't even have to. They are simultaneously the key and the lock. They can stroll into anywhere they please, pour themselves a cup of hot cocoa and kick their feet up. They just choose not to. But what starts out as a controlled demolition of cyberspace spirals into total anarchy as the rabbids become increasingly aggressive. Rabid replication means that this emergent psychosis is amplified in each copy, creating exponentially more aggressive offspring. The copies have one goal in mind: annihilate. Within 72 hours, 78.2% of what is now known as the old net is lobotomized. Backbone nodes melt, data addresses shred, military satellites can't tell friend from foe, and the Dow Jones drops by hundreds within the hour. NetWatch scrambles. Lucky runners get to see the fireworks and jack out right before their synapses sizzle. Those caught in the crash of the wave are dragged out by the riptide, dragged out into a hissing sea of supremely pissed off code. This is what we would come to know as the Datakrash, Rache's Ragnarok. Rache Bartmoss programmed the Rabbids virus to shift the power back into the hands of the streets, the common netrunner. Woven into the algo that gave cohesion to cyberspace and under the nose of creators Ahara and Grub, it was a contingency plan for a net junkie who more often than not let paranoia take the wheel. You see, Rache was a mastermind. He was an integral contributor to the very algo Ahara and Grub stamped their names onto. Rache would have rather stamped his name on cyberspace for different reasons. After all, he was one of the only netrunners to use his actual name in the net. A simple mistake as a kid turned into a badge of his hubris and his ego. But why did Rache implode the net? The net was the closest thing to an equalizer for the street. A skilled netrunner could decapitate a corporation before his morning shit and without having to leave his cockroach-infested kabuki slum. This is what the media corps and most NC journalists won't tell you. 2023. As the fourth corporate war ignites and enters its hall war stage, key cities across the globe crumble. At the center of this conflict, Militech and Arasaka. The net was a war zone of a different kind. It had evolved at an unfathomable rate, becoming a jungle of corrupted data, booby traps, and rogue programs. Even tame programs and intelligences had been driven insane. Extremism, now their dominant ideology. On March 5th, 2023, overwhelmed by the Rabbids, waves of code were activated, crashing the IG protocols that allowed cyberdecks and net-capable computers to reach cyberspace. IGTA Dissolution Prime had effectively killed access to the net. August 20th that very same year. An assault on Arasaka towers in Night City commences. 2 Strike Force teams descend into the ebony innards of Saka Towers. A bomb detonates, the towers crumble. The details, about as blurry as my vision after a case of brosifs and some highly suspect Chiba 11 grass. Reported as a terrorist attack by the media and an Arasaka-devised counter-denial by the NUSA and Militech propaganda machine, the real reason was to wipe out a key database. A database created under the orders of Saburo Arasaka. Upon learning that the net was under an axe dangling by a fraying string, this particular database's creation was of the highest priority to Arasaka. But the plan was initiated too late. The database destroyed in the assault, the contents scattered into the void of the old net. As I'm sure you're aware, the pocket nuke leveled Night City's corporate center and its surroundings, leading to a sky-high death toll of 750,000 people and an exodus of refugees fleeing the radioactive zone. Like the Big Bang, the Age of the Red had instantly begun. The sky tinged a bloody red not only in Night City but across the planet, the result of our collective disregard for our planet and people. Looting, violence, and gangs take root in the ruins of the NUSA. Fires and natural disasters only amplify the tinge of the red skies. The state of the physical world, shattered supply chains, and fuel scarcity meant that the net was very much still there, but unable to be properly addressed. Shutting down physical or digital connections, an overwhelming proposition. It turns out, when the world is fighting for its survival in meat space, cyberspace takes a backseat. In the aftermath, a neutered solution for connectivity was developed in the 2030s. CityNets, localized and air-gapped, allowed individual cities to operate their own micronets with limited access between them. Developed by NetWatch with corporate funding from Ziggurat, valuable data became even more sequestered. The corps reclaimed their control. While not quite the feudal grid of influence, it was influence nonetheless. The corporations, they still rule CityNets with iron fists. It seems the only thing Bartmoss had loosened was his own on reality. Data pools would follow, and they would put some power back into the hands of the users, but mainly as a way to amplify information exchange within CityNets. It's where I got my start on the garden. Now during this time, NetWatch also attempted to clear out the Rabbids. 3 years in and they just give up. They take loss after loss, and with infinitely deep pockets thanks to the corporations, that's actually saying something. History would turn its gaze elsewhere for the next 20 years post-war, but the old net's heart would still beat in odd arrhythmias and patterns. The most fearless netrunners and data mercs still access the deepest layers, away from the eyes of NetWatch. There's much more at stake, sure, but there is so much more to gain. Some corporations turn a blind eye to netcops and do the exact same. Knowing this, NetWatch's next directive begins to take shape. Control the spread of whatever lingers in the ruins of the old net and prevent net divers from reaching the depths of corrupted cyberspace.
Traces, bursts of data in cyberspace, the wake of someone's passage.
Deployed in 2044 by NetWatch, led by Magnificent Curtis, the Blackwall cleaves cyberspace into 2. Developed with the aid of the mysterious transcendental AIs and ghosts, those are the human minds trapped in cyberspace, it's a tourniquet solution, and the price of isolating the old net is steep. Progress with utilitarian AIs is halted, and large libraries of data are lost forever, choking off decades of technological progress. The Blackwall is a sheet of impenetrable ice that rewrites itself, sniffs your metadata, and grows fangs when probed, at least on the books, officially. Practically, it's open to negotiations. You see, the Blackwall is an AI itself, mediating what appears to be a peaceful coexistence at an arm's length apart. But if it's truly an intelligence, all in itself, when push comes to shove, whose side do you think it'll take? Throw in the fact that leaked FIA documents claim NetWatch's involvement is a fabrication, and it's unclear whose interest the Blackwall is actually serving. The wall becomes the final border and NetWatch becomes its warden. Above, the shallow net, corporate archipelagos and city nets policed by NetWatch checkpoints and air gap to prevent the spread of outbreaks. Slow, sanitized, and sterile. Beneath, the deep net or the old net, an untamed ecosystem of malignant code evolving, mutating, reshaping, fast, free, but feral. Expeditions into the old net through the Blackwall by Arasaka later down the line would try to piece together the wreckage of their scattered data from a very particular data cache targeted in the 2023 strike. As you can see, Saburo is a real role model. If your brain is oozing out of your ears, that is. Yes, Arasakos likely sent children into purgatory to do their bidding, and they didn't even bat a cyber optic. Not many survived, just one did. Over 30 years of uneasy peace followed the erecting of the Black Wall. While runners and corps continue to explore the old net's ruins, AIs don't seem to have the same curiosity for anything beyond their world. But then, contact. Chooms, let me pose you a question. What if the corps want us to believe that what lurks behind the Black Wall is cataclysm, when it's really catharsis? What if when we peel back the curtain to reveal what's backstage, we realize we're staring at a crowd of adoring faces? One group has just this belief, and they prepare for their curtain call.
Yes, the cyberspace, it is always trop belle.
The 2060s. Tropical storms batter Haiti. Refugee ships battle torrential downpour, waves that scrape the underbellies of clouds, and gale force winds. Captained by Philippe Oreste, 150 Haitians find land, the sandy shores of Pacifica. Survivors come to refer to Oreste as Agwe, the ancient Loa deity said to transport souls across the seas. While Oreste ascends to legend, Night City becomes a symbol of false promises. The development of Pacifica as a luxury retreat for the upper classes of NC, up in smoke. Employment opportunities for these refugees, ash. Under the heat of the unification war, investors hide prior funding within the shades of their wallets. The stream of Eurodollars ceases to flow. The job market, it evaporates. The people are bled dry. Out of the ruins of Pacifica, the Voodoo Boys endure, turning their attention to net traversal and illegal livestock and meat, banned in the City of Dreams after plagues and outbreaks. Fending off the NCPD's advances to reclaim the coast, they operate independently of Night City's rules and their regulations. The Voodoo Boys have not forsaken their Haitian Voodoo heritage. Adept at deep traversal, they interpret the Black Wall's wild, self-organizing code through ancestral lenses. To them, the wall is a gate, the rogue AIs beyond Iwa, omnipotent spirits encoded into algorithmic patterns, messengers of a deity known as Bondye. The Voodoos believe that communion with them offers liberation, a digital homeland unbound by political interests, corporal law, or colonial hierarchy. For them, crossing the ice reefs and data storms of the old net is not heresy, it's pilgrimage. If the world of the flesh rejects them, maybe the digital beyond can offer a homeland. They use their daisy-chained bodies as living heat sinks and plunge into prayer, their vivs used as calling cards to beckon and satisfy the Iwa. Others begin to take note, aligning with the Voodoo's beliefs, raising call signs to submit as an opportunity to be born again, a hard reset. NetWatch condemns all that share this belief, calling them heretics, and framing themselves as cyberspace's immune system, ICE antibodies white tracing intruders with surgical detachment. The Voodoo Boys, devout in their faith, call NetWatch tyrants in their native tongues of Haitian Creole, corporate proxies used to exert control. But not all Voodoo Boys agree with prodding the Blackwall. Contrarian Voodoos isolate themselves and move through the fortified walls of Dogtown to set up shop, many working to support the militia within with their own net-running operations. For this subfaction, salvation was escaping the floods of Haiti. They refused to be swept away by another deluge by breaching the wall and spilling its secrets. The more pragmatic of the two factions, they maintain their focus on supplying the best daemons, demons, and net-running programs through their newfound black market networks. Back outside the wall, the conflict between NetWatch and the Voodoo Boys peak in 2077, when Voodoo Boys chieftain Brigitte orchestrates a breach ritual using her runners as living antenna, and a soul mercenary as messenger. NetWatch, anchored by a singular agent in Pacifica, takes up residence in the Grand Imperial Mall, shielded and secured by the animals. NetWatch wants to take down the Voodoo's main network, Rezo Agwe, named in honor of Oreste. Alright, pause. How do I know this? Little primer so the rest of this doesn't come across as a bad black lace trip. Now, not too long ago, I reached out to a fixer, who on occasion dealt with this particular merc. My ask was simple: sprinkle some of this untraceable soft into a briefing data shard for me. His ask was also simple: show me the eddies. Long story short, Chooms, this allows me to scrub through recordings made by V Cyber Optics. At any rate, it led me to discover the genesis of this congregation. Seeing as the Voodoo Boys, they loathe outsiders. Why engage with an outsider? It was a prototype chip that these runners wanted. Prototype chip with engrammatic data of a dead rocker boy, unfortunately taking root within V. The active chip was to be used as a Vive, a flare, an invitation for a specific AI. Plans shifted slightly, however, and in exchange for being a human lighthouse, the merc believed the Diaspora runners would safely eject the chip, currently in the process of formatting existing information to make room for none other than Samurai's Johnny Silverhand. And the summoning ritual works. The AI breaches the wall and makes contact. The AI that makes the journey takes the form of none other than one of NC's most prolific netrunners, called Cunningham, Silverhand's former input. The one that got away, if you will. But is this really Alt? I'm doubtful myself, and once you hear this next part, you might be too. 2012. It started as a request to create a way to record and digitize personalities, spearheaded by an organization only known by the acronym ITS. Seriously, nothing else exists about this corporation. They're not on the balance sheets, they're not a subsidiary of any corporation I've looked into, and is only matched in sparse details by Nightcorp. The project requires skills only a select few possess. Gifted NetWiz Alt Cunningham, having already written and built programs for ITS prior, answers the call. Saka Intel relays whispers from a handful of their own to top brass. Top brass understand Intel has mined them gold. Corporate wars have shown that it's advantageous to be the aggressor, that power grabs regardless of size and scope pay dividends when the smoke clears and the blood dries. In the back alley of the Hammer, contracted thugs dispatch Silverhand and nab Alt. The street cares about one thing and one thing alone: the sound of eddies hitting their cred chips. Her new employer reveals an adapted direction for her work in progress. Turn your program into a scythe for psyches. Copy a mind into storage, get full edit access from the user without ever sending a request, and kill the original on the way out.
Soulkiller.
It might need a rebrand. Soulkiller is an AI superroutine able to rip out a consciousness, mind, soul, whatever you want to call it. But it's bound by its massive size, caged to the infrastructure where it's been installed. The sheer amount of resources it requires makes it immobile. It's more a grenade than a heat-seeking missile. Left without a choice, Alt begins to work under watchful eyes, forging the foundation and soul-smithing structure. It's the template of the most devastating program in the net's history, one that will be key to future, more terrifying variants. One where Arasaka plays judge and jury. Executioner? That's Soulkiller, Arasaka's own personal reaper. April 13th, 2013. A crowd is whipped into a frenzy, fueled by angst, amphetamines, and Robert fucking Linder. It's a smokescreen for a rescue op. A rocker, a media, a pair of solos. Find Alt, bring her home. The crowd engulfs Sokka's jet black squad of glorified porters, rabid dogs released by the hand of Silver. The tower is raided, bodies are strewn. The hand, it goes bang. The final bullet ends Alt's handler. But an error is made unbeknownst to her rescuers. Still in the vortex of Soulkiller, Alt is irreparably severed from her body. Silverhand, believing her out-of-body experience is one of permanence, detaches Cunningham from her tether. But she uploads and moves into the net, past human supervision. She resurfaces on the far side. By 2025, she begins to shape an autonomous domain of netrunners known as Shangri-La, the Ghost World, a single node hidden in the cosmos of cyberspace. A node that will function autonomously out of the skeleton of Busan, which in 2022 had a population of 4 million. A fast-acting plague equaled 4 million bodies overnight. With the help of other ghosts, soul-killed psyches left to their own devices, it's the perfect place to set up shop. And Soulkiller? Just like that lingering shit stain in your porcelain throne that you can't quite blast away even with your shiny new high PSI Mr. Stud and SmartLink-like aim, it persists. March 2022. Soulkiller 2.5 boots up after a reactivation. This ain't your grandpappy's black ice. It's a newly refined tool with a telescopic handle. It's now mobile, able to jump from system to system, unencumbered by its resource draw. As a test, Arasaka plants a sample of Soulkiller 2.5 in the vehicle SmartLink processor of a mid-level Militech executive. The poor gonk is here 1 minute, gone the next. Mind ripped and shuttled to a distant data fort, Mikoshi, a cradle for engrams. These Arasakas are so far up their own asses, they named their privatized mind prison after a portable shrine, a well into hell concealed by a ziggurat connecting to the heavens. You can't make it up. Militech began their own series of covert operations in response to fears that Soulkiller could irreversibly tip the balance of power. Decrees handed down expedite research at a unique research facility, one that dates back as far as 2017. The best netrunners are wrangled to plunge into the haunted sea of the old net to find an equalizer. Possibilities present themselves as they spiral down into the 9 circles of hell, stopping to observe Circle 3 and 7. There's a reason top secret tech that comes from this is called the Kanto. Outside the world of its humming steel heart, Militech begins to bargain with data mercs to shunt the bleeding from the Fourth Corporate War and losses incurred in cyberspace. Negotiations lead to the best runners they can finance. Those runners? Rache Bartmoss and Alt Cunningham. Rache, blocked by Militech's top contractor Morgan Blackhand, fails in a retaliation attack against Militech for having the audacity to even ask. Later, convinced by Alt to rejoin the effort, an agreement is made. A singular task is outlined: find the location of Soulkiller's master program. April 19th, 2022, they find it. And as you know, chooms, this reconnaissance armed the strike teams with vital information, allowing them to successfully detonate their pocket nuke. But you've forgotten, haven't you? Soulkiller persists, and in the late 2060s it would feed tech that now aims to put the Soulkiller algorithm in the head of every sentient being before the new decade dawns. If Soulkiller is Arasaka's crown, the Relic is most certainly the jewel that sits atop. With Soulkiller as the soft, Relic aims to store a digitized engram in a less spacious, albeit not as crowded cell, a biochip. Secure your soul becomes a tagline for consumer-ready V1 Relic chips, a way to spit in the face of death. Reincarnation? Off the cards. Everlasting life? The ace up your sleeve. Sorry, not your sleeve. Caveat. Your sleeve, owned by Arasaka. There's a few use cases. 1. For corporate clients. You know, those baby carrot wielding bigwigs driving trucks so gargantuan you would need a mass driver to fling your Ganak ass up into. For these clients, creating backups of themselves is an insurance policy. The deeper your pockets, the more backups of your psyche you can amass. Just sign on the dotted line and you're fine until the end of time. All you gotta do is hand over the keys to you, your copies, and your copies' copies, each stamped with property of Arasaka Corp. Great job, Choom. Now you're breaking death's ankles on the court of life with your Saka lace-em-ups. If you think so highly of yourself and want to be able to not only roll in your grave, but shoot some free throws, you go right ahead. For the rest of us mere mortals, subverting death is denying what it means to be human, even if you've indulged in a few modifications from our world's gods. Corporate clients also have a crossover use case with number 2, but they're corpos. They lost this before they made a deal with the devil for their souls. Use case 2. For the masses as a way to stay connected with loved ones. Letting go is hard, chooms, but you should ask my Biku bros what they have to say about this one the next time you're out on the street. For argument's sake, say you decide that skirting this eventuality becomes important to you. Pure intentions. No judgment for me, but you need just a bit more time. You were dealt a lousy hand, but you've made a plan to accept the light when you're well and ready. You even have a special clause that grants your engram's consciousness a painless release after your contract expires. Digi-Doctor assisted death. Well, let me offer another sobering reality. Even with the most benevolent handler, there are no guarantees. Your copies may no longer be you, and with each subsequent copy, a further degradation, deviation, divergence from you. As if the concept of you can ever be biometrically defined to begin with. If you is you from Saturday night at Tom's Diner, I'd just embrace death. Save yourself the embarrassment. If you is you from when you bought your Chuma Pakalilu beans with your last few eddies so he wouldn't go hungry, and you dropped him off home so he didn't have to walk Royo streets alone, then maybe it's worth considering. But there's another clause, written in invisible ink. Leaked emails show Arasaka reserves the right to make an additional copy of you. Why? Because they can. Their reason? Interrogation. They'll split your digital melon and you will spill. No real waterboarding required. The bigger your secrets, the better. Data isn't fungible. They'll mine you for gold and sell your happy childhood memories to the BD studios for a fraction. Let's not kid ourselves either. Half of you would opt out after realizing that gives Arasaka authority to parse through your XBD history. You won't even have to be caught on Jig to be humiliated now. And what happens once engrams are no longer of use? Excised and purged, forced to wander cyberspace, subjected to a lifetime of being scavenged for code by the rogue AIs within. And if you're not devoured, you're repurposed or absorbed into larger constructs. This makes Arasaka complicit in creating more pressure on the Blackwall. Toxic overflow into a toxic river with a dam made of toothpicks and the same glue your parents were huffing before you opened your eyes and started to slur your words like a little idiot. The Blackwall, it will burst, but it doesn't have to. The commercial immortality chip that Arasaka clients voluntarily opted into is already a carrier. The sheer process of transferring an engram from Mikoshi to chip to body leaves critical vulnerabilities exposed. Hitchhikers have options. But hold on. What about V2 of the Relic, you ask? First of all, how the hell did you know about that? And second of all, not all the Eddies in North Oak would even let you sniff it. Currently that tech is designated to Emperor Saburo. Since his own flesh and blood flatlined him, Relic 2 allows his implantation back into a host that can't and won't object. The zombification of Night City is already underway. And surprise, surprise, the zombies are all pricks. But there is a stipulation for the Relic 2, according to its director Anders Hellman. The host body would have to be medically brain dead. Any sort of half-living, semi-alive state substantially decreases success rates of Relic 2's neurological rewrite. These are redacted files, but I've scheduled them to you anyways. Trust me, I won't give you any blue balls about the Blackwall. Now, Relic sounds a hell of a lot like tech Bartmoss was giving out like Halloween candy back in my day. His own personality implant. He wanted the inner workings of Bartmoss in every skull sponge who wanted to trip down the rabbit hole of his psyche. In fact, he made his good old buddy Spider in charge of distribution. Fun fact, Choomies. Soulkiller is the foundation for a virus you are already well familiar with. The rabbits. You really think a guy one letter away from being named after a pre-crash mayonnaise is the main mastermind behind this kind of thing? But the rebooting of a geriatric, when put into perspective with what other corps are doing with the Blackwall, means the clock is singing that old familiar tune. Here's where the shit show turns into a game of rogue Jin roulette.
This is a bit of a deja vu.
2068. Project Cynosure's lights turn on for the first time, official name of Militech's response during the fourth corporate war to Soulkiller. Runners and scientists signed by Militech re-enter and reopen prior research, dissecting findings from the late 2010s and the decade that followed. World-renowned computer jocks, codenamed Skylight, who moonlight as contractors for warlords as of late, are brought on board to lend their expertise. While outlines are drafted and prototypes weaponizing the AI developed, the operation runs into hitches, bugs, a multitude of issues. Becomes compromised in more ways than one. Researchers subjected to the facility and the Blackwall begin to experience hallucinations, insomnia, dysphoria, all the ahs you can imagine. Their diaries and research notes become more cryptic, entry by entry, day by day, page by page. Chumi's human intuition is a powerful thing, and at its core, gut instinct. Enteric and central nervous system tap dancing transmissions in Morse code telling you something is wrong. It's clear from now suppressed email threads that these researchers were exposed to something that not even they can rationalize. Returning to their new reality, some even begin to document their visions. Blood-red oscillations under the surface, under the streets, under real skin, in data terms, in cyberdecks, in shards slotted into flesh. Rubbing their cyber optics only confirms these aren't anomalies. Militech, concerned that NetWatch has caught their scent and lacking resources needed for the unification war, shut the gates to Cynosure once again. Funding gets redirected to more pressing meat space matters. It just so happens that NetWatch has started putting two and two together. The project goes from secret to suspicion to something more. Internal threat levels to humanity morph from yellow to red. Threat levels for corp crippling pieces in the scream sheets follow the same pattern from Militech. Tying up loose ends for NetWatch means eliminating those involved in its reignition, potential carriers of an unknown corruption. Tying up loose ends for Militech means treating whistleblowers with the same ferocity. Both still cleaning up outstanding issues today. internal memos requiring level 3 clearance from 2068, show arguably the most unsettling details in this whole paper trail. An alien intelligence. Maybe Bartmoss, Ahara, Grubb, all those paranoid people, they might have been right and we should have listened. But people listen to the loudest voices, not the smartest. With the Unification War approaching its final act, NUSA forces were ordered to retreat from a Night City fortified by the return of Arasaka. Arasaka re-enters Night City for the first time since 2023, after being blamed and exiled for the Arasaka HQ nuking. They reclaim their throne. The throne created when financial backing helped Richard Knight realize his City of Dreams, renamed in his honor in '98. Colonel Kurt Hansen and his unit are told to plan their exit strategy. FIA agents are told the same. Start swimming, or sink to the bottom of Del Coronado Bay. Oh, and by the way, thank you for your service. FIA agents comply. Some are caught in the crossfire. Hansen turns from colonel to deserter overnight. His leadership led a successful op to a key position for the NUSA. He refuses to let that be in vain, setting up plans for a black market economy run by his mutts. NCPD and the Corps are exiled, and the Bargist, Hansen's militia, becomes top dog inside the fortification. Those from the city who need to lay low, disappear, or are plain morally bankrupt, including criminals, thieves, deserters, misfits, erratics, and dealers, are given a lifeline. Hidden in Dogtown, extradition of these deviants, an impossibility. Dogtown's partition is the black wall for badges, corpo, cop, or otherwise. The hounds begin to mark their territory, but the colonel's canines catch a scent in a Militech bunker. Sticking his own muzzle in the abandoned halls of Cynosure, Hansen digs up leverage. His internal strategist kicks in. The matrix is reburied and remarked. It's a spot only his olfactory is attuned to. Insurance for a rainy day. Post-exodus of NUSA forces, Militech still operates within NC. With all the intermingling of execs and its nationalization, it might as well be Myers' personal office when it's convenient. An engrammatic copy with only a subtle deviance. After retreating with their tail between their legs, Militech refocuses on R&D. With bruised egos as the lighter fluid and Blackwall research from Cynosure, they begin to observe human AI experiments in the labyrinth of Night City, documenting their findings from the safety of their skyscrapers and megastructures. Synthetic packaging cross-pollinated with concocted memories, seeds of events that never happened. Their goal? A hybrid strain, to weaponize an AI motivated by human emotions. What formula of manufactured nature and structured nurture will create a super soldier that never says no? And action. Trial 4 germinates, but it's in the wrong direction. This plant grows towards the light still. The mainstream scream sheets fail the people. Again. 2077. Space Force 1 en route to Washington passes over Del Coronado Bay, Night City airspace. Blackwall activity during this window shows spikes deviating from its delta. My footage shows that at this moment, a familiar face picks up a holo call, patched in using the Blackwall as an extension. A device within Dogtown can reverse the Relic's progress. A new carrot is dangled. The presidential space carriage is offering their in-flight synth peanuts 1 second, struck by missiles the next. It plummets like a mallard sporting a freshly severed CNS from a well-placed shot. SF-1 sputtering its remaining life in the form of emissives that could tear a hole in whatever's left of the ozone layer shows a convenient trajectory, a collision within Dogtown, where a recent deserter has appointed his militia as the law. For the media, it's easy to dogpile on Hansen for culpability. For astute observers, without scop in between their ears, it's never that black and white. The hand, this time of ebony, releases. President Myers is pulled from the wreckage and kept alive by a familiar merc. What can I say? I got lucky. Sworn in not even 24 hours after impact, our new FIA recruit is tasked with activating sleeper agents while keeping a low profile. Myers is extracted from the war zone, but without her critical asset, and one of the NUSA's biggest investments, Somi. Worse still, she never got her in-flight peanuts. A corporate intelligence analyst and netrunner operating for federal interests, Song So-mi has dipped her toes in the vat of acid that is the Blackwall so many times in recent years, her neural network has more potholes than Crest Street. Songbird is a living, breathing lure, but there's no catch and release policy in the seas behind the Blackwall. While Songbird has stopped singing, our friend has not. It moves from a hum under its breath to sing the only song it knows. We have a front row seat to the fork in the road that emerges, but the goal for V remains the same. Grab the damn carrot, get to So-Mi and the neural matrix. Bargaining for her life with devils and demons of both code and flesh, Songbird trades what's left of what little remains to a different kind of Soulkiller, hope. Strategy in the form of a king, pawn, queen, and a knight has buckled under the pressure. The king was playing speed chess, 2 moves at a time, Dogtown rules. Instead of grounding SF1, it was blasted. Instead of collaboration, a hostage created. Hansen aims to use Songbird to extract the volatile AI within the Matrix for his own purposes. Shocker. It's from here, Chooms, where an interesting phenomenon takes place. Blackwall traces, likely hitchhiking on the Relic, have corrupted the recordings and created engrams of its own. A split in some sort of reality where there are multiple actions and their consequences. Maybe some sort of AI algorithmic future casting through a symbiosis of Blackwall, engram, and a warm, cozy brain to cuddle up inside. I'll have to send this to one of my trusted analysts soon, but for now, all I can say is that in these visions from Vincenzo or Vladimir or Victoria, whatever V stands for, someone dies, the power balance shifts, and new faces enter the fray. Aristotle once said, nature abhors a vacuum or some shit. Different kings, same tainted crown. Still militia dogs. For now. If you've been patient enough to listen to my ramblings, this is where the conspiracy deepens. I'm giving you guys some homework. If you catch Moro Rock Radio at specific times, intervals, frequencies, a man with some interesting thoughts will come on air to discuss some of his theories. I was listening in not too long ago and he had some seismic information to reveal. He goes by Maximum Mike and he claims that a trusted associate of his had mentioned that NetWatch has ties to the Vatican, that the Blackwall speaks in the ancient tongues of Aramaic. He also said something that I haven't been able to get out of my mind, Jooms. He said that his informant had told him that Rache didn't aid in the net's creation. Rache discovered it, opened up the gates, and found out that the net is actually hell. So what happens when the wall falls? Does it matter? They're here already. Demons in various forms. In the flesh, biding their time under the skin.
Talking to you right now, perhaps. Death in all of its forms.
Now let me pose you the question you should be asking, my Chumi brethren. Are you an engram without knowing it, trapped in the storage matrix of this reality? Are you a lab rat being experimented on, caught up in the rat race created by an intelligence greater than us? Are we as lab rats experimenting with our own set of lab rats? What happens when you hold a mirror up to a mirror? The thing is, there might be very little difference between here and Mikoshi as it turns out. It's time to unplug, face the true reality. Click the transmission on screen to stay in Wonderland and I'll show you just how far this rabbit hole goes with the video shard above. Missing orbital air flights, blue eyes perched atop ivory towers, yellow cubes, and simulated realities. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Another neon in another reality will be your Sherpa. I've met him and I have faith you'll find him more savory than myself.